There are moments in life that arrive out of nowhere, upending the fragile comfort of our everyday routines. That morning was supposed to be mundane. Another coffee, another waiting line, the comforting hum of the city waking up. The smell of fresh espresso filled the office building's lobby, with people shuffling to start their day as usual. Among those countless anonymous faces, I felt invisible, an observer in the sea of activity. My phone buzzed with reminders I barely noticed, my mind running through meetings and deadlines. Normal. Ordinary. But the order of things can unravel with a single overheard word. Sam. My partner was sitting a few tables away, her laughter punctuating the ambient din as she waited for her friend Jill. I barely paid attention, until, by pure chance, I caught a snatch of their conversation, a voice, half playful, half secretive, "I'm getting a full-body wax." In that moment, nothing else existed. Those words yanked me out of reverie, out of comfort, straight into a place of uneasy curiosity. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard correctly. What did she mean by that? Was it a spa appointment? Something medical? The phrase ricocheted in my mind, insistent and urgent, impossible to ignore. I replayed recent moments, Sam mentioning appointments, changes in her routine, trying to piece together an explanation, but it eluded me. As I waited for my coffee, the world's noise faded. All I could hear was that one line, again and again. Full-body wax. Old anxieties reared up, memories of breakups past and friendships ending over secrets. What if this was the beginning of something similar? I tried to reason with myself, telling myself I was being irrational, but doubt is powerful. It weaves stories quickly, convincing you that the ordinary is, in fact, a careful lie. I glanced at Sam, searching her face for clues. She seemed normal, at ease, perfectly herself. The mundane was intact, yet my world now felt precarious. One overheard phrase had upended my sense of security. Should I say something? Ask a simple question and put my mind at ease? Or would that make me seem paranoid, controlling, intrusive? As minutes stretched on, the seeds of suspicion grew. The context of her laughter, her friend's knowing nod, her confident air, they all became part of my internal narrative. What if Sam was keeping something from me? What if our foundation of trust was not as solid as I believed? People say relationships require faith, but faith is rarely enough in the face of uncertainty. By the time Sam stood to leave, the damage was done. What should have been a typical morning had become a pivot point, a moment of overhearing that would color our story in a way I'd never imagined. As the day wore on, my mind became a battlefield of wild suppositions. I tried to drown out the echoed phrase, full-body wax, but it clung to me, persistent as a splinter under the skin. For hours, I replayed the moment, deconstructing every aspect. Sam's tone, her body language, the way Jill seemed to wink, the subtle air of secrecy. Were they sharing something meant to be hidden from me? Assumptions are peculiar creatures. They need almost nothing to grow riotous. A stray word, a half glimpse, an unsent message. These become fuel for the worst sorts of conspiracy. I began to build storylines in my head, each more dramatic than the last. Maybe Sam was seeing someone else, preparing for a rendezvous she hadn't told me about. Maybe she was caught up in something illicit. A beauty appointment she was ashamed to admit. An event she felt I would judge. Each theory took me further from reality and deeper into my own insecurities. The trouble with incomplete information is that it rarely invites patience. Instead, it provokes action. I found myself scrolling back through old chats, rereading her messages for coded hints. Had Sam changed, or had I simply neglected to notice? My mind jumped to tracks I swore I'd never walk. Jealousy, suspicion, casting myself in the role of the wronged partner even before any wrong had occurred. In these moments, it's easier to react than reflect. The cancel decision came quickly, a knee-jerk impulse rather than a righteous choice. I sent a message retracting plans for dinner the following night. I suspended all warmth in my texts, short with her, vague and withholding. My imagination painted her as a stranger, someone with secrets. someone preparing a betrayal. There was a power to this narrative that startled me. I began to feel justified in my coldness, certain she'd crossed some invisible line. Perhaps Sam noticed, but she said nothing at first, trying to brush past my abruptness, hoping that the mood would lift and I would return to myself. All the while, I struggled with the knowledge that my judgment rested on nothing but guesswork and whispers. It is striking just how much damage pure assumption can inflict when left unchecked. I built walls based on shadows and echoes, with no foundation beyond my own fears. The hardest part was knowing that, even as I distanced myself, a simple conversation could have set everything right. Yet pride, wounded and tentative, kept me from seeking clarity. Days passed in this limbo. My stomach ached with anxiety, replaying the moment 100 times in my mind. I pictured alternative realities. Sam sitting with someone else, laughing over drinks, confiding in another. I let doubt cast its long shadow over every interaction, convinced that the truth could only hurt me. This spiral, I now realize, didn't begin with Sam, or Jill, or any real secret. It began with my own hunger for certainty, the desperate need to be secure in love. The full-body wax phrase was only a trigger. My reaction was the bullet. By the time I was ready to talk, the situation had grown out of proportion, an empire of misunderstanding built on a fragment. The next step, confrontation, was inevitable, but I feared what I might discover when the truth finally came to light. Tension simmered for days, the unfinished business hanging between us like haze on a humid night. Each time Sam walked into the room, I felt a tug, a primal urge to demand the truth, set the record straight, free myself from this cycle of suspicion. But the words were hard to find, clumsy in my mouth, fragile as glass. We spoke as if nothing was wrong, our conversations forced and shallow. I wanted to believe she could sense the storm raging just beneath my surface. One evening, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I invited Sam to sit with me. The chill in my tone, the guarded set of my shoulders, said more than any words could. She braced herself, sensing something significant was about to unfold. "So," I started, trying to keep my voice even, "I heard you talking about a full-body wax with Jill at the cafe the other day. And I just need to know, was there something you needed to tell me?" Sam's eyes widened in surprise. For a moment, she was silent, processing perhaps the layers of meaning I was throwing her way. Then she let out a breath somewhere between amusement and disbelief. "A full-body wax? You mean that insane conversation Jill started about her car?" She laughed, really laughed. The tension I'd been nursing for days dissolved in the face of her genuine reaction. I felt a strange mix of relief and embarrassment. What had seemed so grave, so damning from a distance, was in reality something far more mundane. "She's taking her car on a road trip," Sam explained. "It's a mess from all the mud and leaves, so she was joking she needed a full-body wax for the car. Then she started talking about needing a chiropractor and spa day for herself, so it just became one big, ridiculous joke. I assumed you heard the punchline about the car detailing. You know Jill, she's all about puns." My attempt at detective work suddenly felt juvenile. It struck me how easily misunderstanding had transformed a joke into a crisis. I apologized, my words tumbling out in a rush. Explanations about stress, insecurities, past hurts, the way little mysteries can grow from nothing. Sam hugged me, reassuring, warm. "You have to talk to me, even if it's awkward. I'd rather have an uncomfortable conversation than guess what's bothering you." We laughed about the ordeal for hours, all the scenarios my mind had conjured, the drama, the mistaken assumptions. Even Jill joined in when she heard what had happened, making everyone promise to listen for context before running wild with a fragment. What started as a moment fraught with suspicion ended with humor, humility, and the realization that honesty, even when embarrassing, is always better than silent suffering. In retrospect, the way each of us had handled the misunderstanding said more about our fears, personalities, and the challenges relationships pose than the actual incident ever could. The confrontation wasn't perfect, but it was necessary. We learned together how dangerous quiet resentment can be, and how quickly laughter can clear the air when the truth finally comes out. In the aftermath of our comic misunderstanding, we found ourselves reflecting in earnest. What had started as a small, overheard phrase grew into a whirlwind of anxiety, speculation, and humor, all because neither of us communicated directly. I began to realize how easily we can fall prey to our own minds. The danger of assumptions isn't just that they mislead, it's that they snowball. One fragment of information, when left unchallenged, can be built into an elaborate story that feels real, but isn't. My reaction to the full-body wax conversation was, in its own way, perfectly logical, given the context I'd imagined. But the imagined context was all wrong. It's so easy to get lost in overthinking, especially when past hurts and insecurities are in play. I wasn't just reacting to Sam. I was reacting to echoes from old relationships, wounds that hadn't quite healed, and the chronic mistrust that social media and gossip can fuel. It hit me. Clarity usually comes not from knowing everything, but from asking simple questions. A relationship doesn't need omniscience. It needs open channels. A missed conversation can do more harm than a direct question ever could. Our experience became an example for those around us. Friends listened, laughed, and contributed their own tales of leaping to conclusions without evidence. One friend nervously admitted, "I once ruined a birthday surprise by overthinking a cryptic calendar entry." Another revealed how an overheard joke about Planned Parenthood nearly led to a breakup, before both parties realized it referenced a series of podcast episodes and not anything secret. We talked about the power of context, the way a single sentence can mean 100 different things. Sam and I made a pact. Whenever ambiguity or confusion arose, we'd address it head-on, no matter how silly or embarrassing. Better to be laughed at than to suffer in quiet paranoia. The lessons extended beyond our relationship. In our work lives, we became more diligent, clarifying minor miscommunications, requesting more information when instructions weren't clear, gently reminding peers that context is crucial. The simplicity of the lesson belied its power. Misinterpretation isn't just a risk in love, but in all human communication. The experience changed us. I became more mindful of my internal monologue, challenging my own assumptions before letting them take root. Sam felt more appreciated, knowing that my reaction, while dramatic, came from a place of caring. The episode shifted our dynamic, encouraging greater vulnerability and honesty. We realized that communication is an ongoing process. It's not built in a day or maintained by declarations alone. It requires clarity, patience, and forgiveness. We learned not just to speak openly, but to listen without judgment and ask questions before leaping to conclusions. Our audience, too, began to share their own stories in comments and messages. The flood of anecdotes created a sort of collective therapy, a celebration of human error and comic misunderstandings. The universal message was clear. Nobody is immune from the hazards of assumption, and everyone benefits from a little more transparency. What could have been a disaster became a turning point, a moment where two people chose understanding over accusation, context over certainty. What started with a waxing joke ended with a lifetime lesson. In all things, especially love, ask before you assume. The aftermath of the incident settled into a kind of gentle comedy, one laced with relief, vulnerability, and the memory of just how quickly things could have spiraled out of control. Sam and I embraced the absurdity of it, using laughter as both salve and shield. The full-body wax misadventure became our inside joke, resurfacing whenever one of us started on a story without context or missed the point of the other's anecdote. With time, what could have been a rift became a bridge. We found new lightness in our relationship, a shared understanding that mistakes are part of love, not its undoing. The embarrassment I felt at my own spiraling paranoia didn't linger as shame. Instead, it became a source of humility, a reminder that nobody is immune to misunderstandings. Sam and I made a pact to keep our communication honest and brave. When doubts crept in, we spoke directly, willing to risk a little embarrassment for the sake of clarity. We honored the magic that lives in vulnerability, the willingness to be a little foolish together for the sake of preserving trust. Our mutual forgiveness felt like renewal. Relationships thrive not because mistakes aren't made, but because partners are willing to move through them with grace. The ripple effect spread beyond the two of us. As friends and viewers heard our story, they responded with their own tales. Stories poured in. Parents misinterpreting texts from their kids. Colleagues who dismantled office harmony over misunderstood jokes. Couples whose biggest fights started with stray comments overheard at parties. Some recounted costly errors. A woman described canceling her wedding plans over a misheard phone call that turned out to be about a dog's grooming appointment. A man confessed to moving out because he thought his roommate was hiding a serious illness, when in fact she was making dinner plans and discussing allergies. Each story, no matter how embarrassing, brought catharsis and joy. There was a universal truth. Every human is capable of missing the context and, in doing so, spinning gold out of straw, stories that matter, even if only for their lesson, on our channel. We encouraged others to join us in sharing and laughing at their own misadventures in miscommunication. The comments filled with confessions, emotional support, and practical advice. Some viewers wrote of newfound courage to address the hard stuff with loved ones. Others celebrated how comedy kept their hearts light in tense moments. As Sam and I continued on, our relationship deepened. We realized that every misunderstanding, handled with honesty and compassion, became a chapter in the story of us. Our audience watched not just for drama, but for connection, reminders that authenticity matters, and lessons learned through awkwardness matter most of all. Our biggest lesson, though, was simple. Trust is the backbone of love, and communication is its lifeblood. Let humor have its place. When the improbable happens, lean in, ask, listen, and let yourself laugh. So, whether your full-body wax moment comes in a crowded cafe, a family dinner, or a quiet text, remember, the greatest betrayal isn't in saying the wrong thing, but in refusing to ask for the truth. Those who dare to clear the air, even with embarrassment, forge relationships that last. And now, we invite you. Share your story in the comments below. Let's build not just an audience, but a community ready to learn, laugh, forgive, and connect, one misheard moment at a time.